All my life, I've known the saying, birds of the same feather flock together, thinking there was just one figurative meaning. People that behave the same tend to hang around each other. However, I didn't know that there's a deeper meaning in which you have to alter the order of the words just slightly. To fully understand the saying, it should read, birds that flock together will begin to have the same feather. Confused? Don't worry, it gets better. Imagine a group of crows with a single raven in the midst of the flock. Now, unless you have very good eyes, unlike me, it would be very difficult to notice that one raven in the crowd of crows. This embodies the influence of company. You may not even remotely seem like those around you initially, but because influence is a gradual change, only time can expose the similarities between you and those around you. A few years ago, I made a friend. She wasn't my typical kind of friend, but a friend nonetheless. She liked to live in the moment, had no regard for the future, and her life motto was, "We're still young." I, on the other hand, had always been that person who did everything right and on time. However, the more I was around her, the less I cared for things that truly mattered. I had teachers and friends coming up to me, asking me why my grades were dropping, why I wasn't polite or respectful anymore, why I wasn't the old me. Time and time again, I brushed it off, thinking that I couldn't possibly have changed that much in the span of, 2 months? Little did I know that influence has no time frame. Whether 6 months or 6 hours, it all has the same effect. Influence, as I'm sure you all know, comes in a pair, negative and positive. Negative influence is a change of mindset causing harmful effects, whereas positive influence is the exact opposite. Picture a world where negative and positive influences live in separate societies. We'll call them the red and the blue zone. Having spent quite a bit of time in the red zone, the home of negative influence, if you will, I can tell you that there is, for one, no motivation. Nobody has the determination to follow their dreams, if they even have any. Along with no motivation, there is procrastination and loads of wasted time on things that shouldn't be of priority. Number 3, the acquisition of bad habits, like, well, I'm sure you don't need me to mention. Although I do have to say, the red zone is a lot more fun. Why should I dwell on my future when I can live right now? The thing nobody told me about the red zone is that the more time I spent in there, the worse my habits would become and the harder it would be to break out of them. After feeling the disappointment and judgment from everyone that knew my former self, I got closer to the residents of the blue zone, the home of positive influence, and the difference I noticed was eye-opening. People had motives and were always concentrated on things essential to their futures. Procrastination was banned in the land of the blue because people understood that time is money and finite. But the one thing that pulled me closer was discipline. People had an actual structure to their lives, whereas I freelanced everything. Unfortunately, I must confess that the blue zone was not as fun as the red, but I received something even better: fulfillment. There is one more zone hidden deep in the realms of the red and the blue, the purple zone. If you know anything about color or the science behind it, you should know that purple is the color of confusion. The purple zone is the place where most people have 2 kinds of friends, one from the red zone and one from the blue. This is not a place where we should feel comfortable. In fact, it may be even more dangerous than the red zone itself because it's harder to recognize how you're being influenced. For the longest time, I believed that the purple zone was the perfect place to be. It's not too much work, but it's not doing nothing either. However, scientifically, it is said that attempting to listen to two contrasting pieces of advice is nearly detrimental to your sanity. Eventually, you'll feel trapped and will have to pick red or blue. Can you guess what most people pick? 9 out of 10 people faced with this very decision pick the red zone. So I ask you, why have we let ourselves become permanent residents of the red zone? How many more red flags do we need? Countless times we have shown that humans are much more drawn to negativity than we are to positivity. I conducted an experiment where I asked 70 students whether they watched the news and if they would still watch it if only positive news was ever reported. Out of all the people that said they watched the news, 61% answered that they would stop watching it if only positive news was ever reported. Interesting. Numerous other social experiments, much more developed than mine, have come to the same conclusion, that we humans absorb pessimism like sponges absorb water. Naturally, we inch closer and closer to the red zone until their mentality becomes our lifestyle. From all this, we need to start small by evaluating just one relationship and asking ourselves, where do I want to live? If your end goal is to be in the red zone, then I must warn you that 2 wrongs have never made 1 right. But if your final destination is the blue zone, my only advice to you would be to cut off all those people trying to include you in their failure. Cut them off. Don't be that single raven stuck in the crowd of crows, because although you may look like them, you will never be them. Find your fellow ravens and flock till your wings give out, because at the end of the day, birds that flock together should have the same feather. Thank you.